All right, here now to talk about today's events are legal analyst Steve Cron and, of course, Phil Schuman. Steve, it's been a while since I've seen you. Your take on the prosecution's case, where we stand right now.
I'm a defense lawyer, but it looks really strong right now. I mean, I don't know what the defense has. Obviously, and I'm not privy to it, but boy, Dr. Schaefer, Dr. Steinberg were terrific. I mean, they were just excellent witnesses. And I don't know what the defense has to counter that.
I think we're all waiting for that. So well, they're going to counter with Schaefer tomorrow, right, Phil?
Cross-examination, yeah.
Okay.
And they have to try to knock some holes on him because he's been their star witness. I mean, we thought Steinberg was good. This guy was much better.
Who could they possibly bring as a defense team to counter this?
Paul White, who's an expert and a friend and a colleague of Schaefer.
Stephen Schaefer.
And Schaefer and he are good buddies. They respect each other. But apparently White has a different view, and we're all kind of waiting with bated breath to find out what he has to say.
Yeah, Schaefer's saying today he was wrong.
Right. He can't come out and say it's fine to give someone propofol at home, can he?
I don't think so. And to say, you know, you can go into the other room and let the drip go. And
he's going to have to maybe focus on the other drugs.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, what do you say? You don't have to monitor somebody when you're giving them a sedative like that? Well, that you do it at home when everybody else says you don't? You know, I don't know what he can say.
I think he's going to say something along the lines that you can use propofol for insomnia, that there's been some new studies on that. What do you think of that?
Well, even if that's true, and all the prosecution experts are saying it's not true, but even if it is, I think you'd have to say you do it in a setting where you're going to monitor the patient. I mean, remember the guy from the company who did the monitoring device and said that Murray used a really cheap device that didn't have an audio sound, so he couldn't hear it.
Plus, he left the room.
Yeah, he left the room.
For 2 minutes or 45
And Schaefer
minutes.
says, you know, you should be watching him because if you were watching him, you would have seen that he stopped breathing, and then you'd stop the drip.
Well, here's the thing.
Matter, right?
None of the testimony has been Dr. Murray's directly killed Michael Jackson with this injection. So that's why it was important to hear today that term direct cause, because they have to legally have the jurors, and correct me if I'm wrong, find a way in the law to convict him. And that term direct cause, in other words, all of the scenario that they set up, not any one of those things specifically killed Michael Jackson.
Well, what's interesting, on your point, all the other experts talked about standard of care, and so did Schaefer, but Schaefer went a step further, saying not only did he violate the standard of care, he killed Michael Jackson.
That's right.
And that was it was leading. I mean, the prosecution is allowed to lead the witnesses like that, and the defense hasn't been objecting.
Defense did not
as a defense attorney, I'm sure you
and
find
they haven't done it the entire. Why haven't they?
Basic law school evidence. You cannot lead a witness on direct. Now, maybe they're a little gun-shy because, if you recall the cross-examination of Dr. Steinberg, I mean, the defense just got their case handed to them because
they didn't seem to win a point on that one.
No, they lost.
And was that surprising to you? Because isn't Flanagan highly regarded?
He is a good lawyer, and I think what happened is he was up against a guy who liked the interaction. He liked the challenge.
This is just an ongoing mystery to us, what the defense is holding back or waiting for.
What's very interesting to me today is if you saw in the audience in some of the video, Dr. White was sitting there taking notes.
Right.
He's going to testify possibly this week, possibly next week. Is that normal for
yeah,
it is. Okay.
Generally what happens is witnesses are excluded from trial testimony. However, experts are allowed to sit in so that when that expert comes to testify, the lawyers can say, is your opinion changed by the testimony of Dr. Schaefer, Dr. Steinberg? They can use the opinions of others in formulating their opinions.
Now, one thing that was very interesting today was that we've seen a very stoic Dr. Conrad Murray throughout this trial. Today, a whole different thing. I think Schaefer got to him. Let's take a look at some of the video. Now, let's watch here. What do you see here, and how does this impact the jury, Steve?
Well, as we look at this, he did react, and you were commenting about that.
Right. I didn't see it, but they said that he stood up and responded more outwardly than he has throughout the trial. He's been pretty stoic.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that was planned. I don't know whether his lawyers said, you know, we're getting feedback that you're sitting there too quietly, you're too passive, and it looks like you're just taking it all in. Maybe some kind of a demonstrative effort will show that you're really offended by this testimony and you want to you want to yell out, but you can't, but you do feel it viscerally.
Maybe the rope-a-dope isn't working, and he needs to be a little bit more open about how he feels.
Image is important.
Yeah.
What do you tell your clients about that?
I tell them to sit quietly, not to respond. They can grimace, they can smile if there's something humorous, but I don't want them standing up and making a show out of their presence in the courtroom.
We did see some reaction earlier on in the trial where Dr. Murray was wiping tears away. That was very early
when they were
on.
talking about Michael Jackson,
Yeah. Well, it's clear that Dr. Murray had an affection for Michael Jackson. I mean, if you listen to that interview with the police, I mean, he said he was his friend, he cared about him. I don't think anybody here thinks that this was intentional, that he wanted Michael Jackson to die. He was his meal ticket and apparently his friend.
So that's going to be the key, is then, okay, if the jurors no doubt think that also.
Right.
So what has the prosecution overcome the hurdle of convincing the jurors that this was bad enough to be a crime?
Well, that's the issue. And also, as you alluded to earlier, Phil, the question of proximate cause. Did Dr. Murray's actions directly lead to Michael Jackson's death? I think between Steinberg and Schaefer, they've
Well, if it ended today,
that
they've answered it.
That's right.
We don't know what the defense is going to do.
And the judge is going to instruct everybody, the jury, that you're not to consider sympathy for Michael Jackson or for Dr. Murray. You know, he's sympathetic in the sense that he lost a patient. He's lost his reputation. He's lost everything as a result of this.
His career and medical license.
His freedom, everything went down the drain with Michael Jackson that night. So there is some sympathy, but if his actions are as they were portrayed, maybe he deserves it.
Well, as we talked earlier, is the Conrad Murray trial now shaping up to be a battle of the anesthesiologists?